You never said a thing, but I knew when it was time to go. It's cold outside. I got salt stains on my shoes. I'm waiting and I'm wondering, people, what the hell I'm gonna do. Now everything was fine until you blew my world apart. Got me picking up the pieces of my broken heart. It's cold outside, and I'm standing on a bus. I'm jammed in like a sardine, and I'm thinking about the two of us. It's a long, long ride, and I guess I'll never know why I'm standing broken hearted and I'm scuffling on a Greyhound floor. Now everything was fine until you blew my world apart. Got me picking up the pieces of my broken heart. Hey, it's cold outside.
Yes, it is.
On the bus.
It's winter in the Great White North.
Well, I'm jammed in like a sardine, and I'm thinking about the two of us.
And Canada is in need of some CPR.
Sunday nights at 9. CPR, Canadian Patriot Report, the only live multicam broadcast on Facebook.
And I'm gonna try it on you. I got my mojo working hard. And I'm gonna try it on you. Well, I done tried in New York City. Boy, now I'm gonna try it on you.
Do you love your country?
Look here.
Do you hate your government? Congratulations. You might be a patriot.
Find me a mojo, man. I'm going down to Louisiana, baby.
Keeping Canada Canadian is what we're doing.
That's what I'm gonna do. You know I done tried in New
Are
York
you
City.
ready to stand on guard for
Now
thee?
I'm gonna try it on you. All right now. Hey.
Actually, dude, can I get a couple minutes with you?
Yeah,
Tell us what's going on here today. Why we're here.
Why are we here today? January 2nd, myself and two friends came out here to protest our local MP's office regarding about our government supporting returning ISIS fighters and not enforcing our criminal code. Spread the word, brother! There, you just heard what it's
Yeah,
about.
no, this is-
Play it again. Play it again.
The song says, "We stand on guard for thee," and that's what it's about. Flanders Field is full of Canadians who are weeping in their graves at what's being allowed to happen in this country today. Tonight on CPR, Canadian Patriot Report, the man who just interviewed Maxime Bernier. Tonight at 9 p.m.
Canadians,
live
Americans,
on
members
Facebook,
of the
Duke
Commonwealth,
Willis,
and patriots the
YouTube, Duke
world
Willis.
over. Welcome
Come
to
have
the
a
show that
chat
tells
with
you
Billy
what
Joyce.
they won't.
Let's hear from the
Exposing
man
fake news,
what
conspiracies,
Maxime
and
Bernier
corruption
had
of
to say.
institutions that govern our lives, and red-pilling the nations one fact at a time. It's Weathering the Storm with your host, Canada's Red Pill, Billy Joyce.
You're probably right, where the people probably never consented to it. But who knows this stuff? You know, like, we know it because you sleep 4 or 5 hours a night because you're busy doing research on top of your real life and everything else you have to do, right? But not many people do that. It's like Bernier. That's why I say if Bernier let me interview him, you can be sure they vetted my channel before they let me interview him.
Oh, yeah.
So if they vetted my channel and let me interview him, and they're allowing me to be the president of an EDA, either it's one big fucking con job, or he's the real deal. And to me, it sounds more like he's the real deal. Who the fuck spends their 56th birthday working 16, 18 hours?
That was my next question. I have a lot of viewers on YouTube that ask me, you know, why are all the MPs pledging allegiance to the Queen? Why does the RCMP pledge allegiance to the Queen? Why? And I mean, I was even asked to ask you if you'd renounce the Queen. Well, you can't do that.
No.
You'd be removed as a member of Parliament.
Well, first of all, it's our constitution. So
I want to get back to what we were discussing earlier about can Bernier actually do something about the mess there is.
Have you got time to come on my show tonight?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we hold this conversation so that it's raw for the audience and have it tonight?
Okay, we can do that.
You don't want to miss tonight's show. Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? I'm busy trying to run a couple of shows here at once, and I got a phone call going on inside my head. Yes, Billy is in here. Wait, I'll shake my head and see if I can mess him up. I tell you what, we're not going to waste any time. I got the man right here on Skype. Let's bring in, I just need to adjust this screen a little bit. We'll bring him in here now, and you folks can start talking with Billy. How you doing, brother? How's things out east? Colder than a witch's you-know-what. A tornado warning in January? Wow.
Has nothing to do with climate change. Like the federal government should be in that. And he's saying that,
folks. Billy, I just realized I had your audio muted. Nothing we can do about it. We've been rolling along. We were just joking anyhow, folks. He's just now getting started talking about Maxine. Again, I jumped in so quick, I forgot to turn on the audio for you, Billy. Sorry about that, brother. But really, nobody missed anything except us poking fun at each other for being old fat guys.
Yeah, and then we got on the topic of climate change. I just dropped something here. I don't know what I dropped there, but I don't think it's anything too important. Yeah, we got on the topic of climate change, and I was saying that Maxime Bernier, though he admits that there may be some sort of climate change going on, he's not quite sure that it's all attributable to CO2, and he admitted publicly that there are scientists that offer different arguments than the conventional ones that we're used to listening to. And in the grand scheme of things, Canada's emissions pale in comparison to, for example. And on top of that, he's saying that the federal government has no business being in the carbon tax because it's a provincial jurisdiction, and many of the provinces already have cap and trade agreements in place that are similar to carbon emission or carbon taxes.
Yeah, like that's something I argued, 3-4 years ago was
wait a minute, there's already pollution control and carbon this and
Yeah.
everything else controls in so many of these unilateral agreements that we have between Ontario and New York State and the Canada Centre for Inland Waters here in the Great Lakes. People here in Ontario, we can't fart without getting environmental permission because we might pollute one of the Great Lakes. Like, it's unreal. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but like
they're gonna tax farmers on the number of heads of cattle because of the gas they emit.
Oh yeah, because cow farts are why Climate Barbie can't get a pay raise.
But that's just one of the joking matters that I covered that he covered in his rally. You saw my interview, so I don't think there's any reason to rehash some of those unless you want to talk about what it was like to push him on the Queen and ISIS. Well, so I'm not really sure where you want to go tonight, but wherever you want to go, we can go.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having the guts to push him on the Queen. It's an issue that's going to have to be addressed by Canadians and Canadian politicians at some point in time. We might as well crack the egg and start making a cake now. And if he's the man that we think is going to lead us into making those kind of changes, we better get his feet wet right from the start.
Well, you know what's interesting is that before you open up the Constitution again and before you open up a referendum on such a thing, maybe it might be a better idea to make sure that everyone living here before that happens share the Canadian values that he also said is the main priority. In other words, if people are coming here from other countries, they better share our values, and if they don't, well, they're not welcomed here. So how you implement that, especially with people that are already here, is a different story. But I've always been of the opinion that where there's a will, there's a way, and his will seems to be to ensure that the Canada that you and I grew up in, or that we thought we were growing up in, is the Canada that we eventually end up having.
Yep, that's what you talked about earlier today, which is why I wanted you here on the show, because I wanted people to hear that from your lips. You and I agree on the fact that what we grew up being told Canada was really isn't what it is.
Yeah, like how many Canadians know that we don't even have free trade amongst our own provinces?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that. I learned that this weekend at the Maxime Bernier Town Hall. So why is it that I'm 42 years old and I'm only finding out now that we had a North American free trade agreement where we could trade freely with the United States on certain things, but we don't have a free trade agreement in Canada amongst the provinces, and it causes on average a 7.3% GDP loss every year because of our stupid trade agreements and tariffs we have to pay. It was funny because at one point... Ow,
my foot, who put this gun in my hand?
Yeah, well, at one point, Maxime Bernier was joking about that, and it was funny how he said it. He says, if you're Nova Scotian and you want to go to New Brunswick and buy cheap beer, you'll be able to.
Yeah, well, hey, I want to know in free trade, why is it a case of beer here in Ontario is like $30 and change, $34 or something like that. I can go 15 minutes through Niagara Falls, across the Rainbow Bridge, and 3 blocks from the Rainbow Bridge is a Piggly Wiggly store. I can walk in and buy that same case of Molson Canadian or Labatt's Blue for like $11.95. And it doesn't matter what the exchange rate's at. I've lived here my whole life back when the Canadian dollar was worth more. You could still buy a case of Canadian beer in the States for half of what we pay for it here.
It's odd, isn't it? It's probably because the province where the beer originated has a free trade agreement with the U.S., but doesn't have a free trade agreement with Ontario.
Bingo!
Isn't that crazy?
You know why?
But right, and I could never ever figure that out.
And there's taxes that are applied to all the products and ingredients that go into it that can't be applied if it's being exported to a country that doesn't tax those ingredients.
Right.
So they have to cut all those taxes out of the price when they ship it out of the country versus selling it here where they can screw us happily, legally.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. They're not, well, legally, constitutionally, they shouldn't be. And that's what Maxime Bernier said. He said he'd invoke section, hold on, I popped it up. I popped it up just in case we
Now, which constitution is this? Because you and I talked about this the other day about...
He's talking about the Constitution Act of 1867. And then it has actually been upheld by the Supreme Court. Like what I'm about to tell you is law. And it's that the government actually has the power to, it's called Section 91(2), also known as the Trade and Commerce Power, the Trade and Commerce Power Act. And it allows the Canadian government to impose on provinces this free trade. And if they don't go along with it, they, Maxime Bernier says he'll take them to court. So there's laws on our books, but nobody's invoking it because they're all globalist puppets selling out to whomever.
To whomever, yeah. And just so people my age, you're a little bit younger, Billy. You're what, like 8-10 years younger than me?
I'm 42.
42. Okay, so you're 16 years younger than me. I'm 58. For those of you who remember, before we had provincial health care programs, like here in Ontario, we call it OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance Plan. If those of you old enough to remember, Pierre Elliott Trudeau stood up and said, every province is going to have their own provincial health care system, or the federal government is going to do it for them and bill them for it. That's what happened to Manitoba.
Well, Maxime Bernier mentioned that too. It's ironic you mentioned that because he said that that kind of stuff shouldn't be going on either.
No, it shouldn't. That was the first indication to me that we lived in a dictatorship.
Right. So it looks like Maxime Bernier is quietly trying to dismantle that.
Well, I empathize with him because I fully understand that if he tells too many Canadians how fucked up things really are, none of them are going to believe him, and he's not going to get any votes. But yet at the same time, I think the harder he plays like Donald Trump, the more he's going to attract that huge majority of Canadians who don't vote. On average, 50 to 70% of the population don't vote. Imagine if he tapped into even half of that portion of the population and 10% of the portion of the population that do vote.
Well, at the rally, it's something that he mentioned is in Nova Scotia, I think it was 30%. We always have a high voter turnout, but in Nova Scotia, 30% of eligible voters didn't vote at all. And the numbers you're talking, 50%. I think it's nationwide average. So even like you say, I think if those people are mobilized, they're going to be mobilized by Maxime Bernier.
Yeah.
Excuse me. He told the story about the one of the presidents of one of his EDAs, and it was the first time that he and the president had spoken directly. And the guy tells him, he says, "I voted NDP all my life. I was a card-carrying member of the NDP." He says, "And it's only two things in your platform that made me come here." He says, "It's your willingness to acknowledge that we have a responsibility to take care of the poor, those who cannot help themselves." And I think we all agree on that. There's a difference between people who literally cannot help themselves and those who are victims or abusers of systematic abuse of our social
system.
Programs.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And he said that. He says, and the fact that you want to get rid of corporate welfare, the regional development agencies, because he said the regional development agencies, like in Atlantic Canada, it's called the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. In the West, it's DEO. I know there's one in Ontario, there's one in Quebec as well, and there's one for the territories.
Yep.
And Just those alone is $5 billion in savings. Foreign aid is $5 billion in savings. The healthcare transfers, I don't think he gave a number, but just there is $10 billion. And even the foreign aid, he made it clear. He says, if there's a catastrophe somewhere where a volcano blows and, you got villages that are,
I heard about that. Yeah.
He says, we're going to help with that. He says, but we're not going to send $200 million to some dictator in Africa because he claims he's going to build highways. He says, do you really think they're going to build highways? He says, you really think they're going to implement things to combat climate change? He's like, they're dictators down there. He's like, so no, we're going to stop giving them money. I talked about that in the interview I did with the reproductive services and the Clinton Foundation donations. A lot of people thought that the Clinton Foundation itself had received $250 million from the government, but I researched it, and the Clinton Foundation received $20 million, and it was all for reproductive services, so basically planned abortion.
Yeah. Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood, abortion, everything. We could go into some gorier stuff too, like the alleged adrenochrome harvesting. But I didn't go there with Maxime Bernier, but
no, and that touches us on in my head, a trigger just went off when you said, what was it? What was the medical term you just used? Endorphins or something like that. I forget now. I just instantly thought of a video I watched earlier today of some of the crazy practices that go on, and we won't even get into that now. It's way too morbid to discuss here.
Yeah. No.
Barry Prince is in the Facebook chat room, and I was talking with him earlier. You mind if we bring him in?
Oh, I'd love to have Barry in.
All right. Barry, why don't you give me actually, you know what? Give me a second here, folks. I'm going to flip you folks over. Billy, why don't you give these people... I'm going to take myself out of the camera. I'm going to put you on screen solo. Talk to the people that are going to watch this video down the road, or the ones watching it now. Give them your honest opinion of Max Bernier, the man, not the politician. Because you got to spend a little sort of off the record time with him, okay? You got to see him with his tie loosened, all right?
Yeah. I got to see him. I got to see him with his tie loosened, and I got to see his team with their ties loosened.
Okay,
and,
so I'm going to put you up here solo. I'm going to bring Barry into the Skype conversation and get it all organized. And when I come back, Barry will be with us. In the meantime, talk to our viewers and tell them, even if you want to follow one of the chat rooms, I don't know what you've got open on your computer, maybe answer some of their questions. Give me a couple of minutes here to get Barry, and you chat with these folks for a second. I'm just going to adjust this.
Hold on, I'm going to get the laptop that your show's streaming on. There's a little time-lapse difference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get my other laptop that I've got your show streaming on with the live chat, and I'll go see if there are any questions in there.
Okay.
And if there are questions in there, I'll address them. But I'll start talking about it, and then if I see something, I'll respond.
All right, there you go, folks. You got a few minutes here while I figure out how to add Barry into this conversation. You've got your chance, a few minutes with Billy Joyce, and ask him anything you want about Maxime Bernier. But Billy, I want to hear in your words what you think of Maxime Bernier, the man, the guy with his tie undone and his jacket off, that sort of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what. I drove 3.5 hours on Friday to go to this Maxime Bernier rally Friday night. I've been tweeting Maxime Bernier and Clinton DeVoe now for a while, and then Clinton DeVoe actually engaged me on Twitter, and someone said, because I put it out that I wasn't doing a one-on-one interview, like I didn't think I was getting a one-on-one interview. And then anyway, Clinton DeVoe puts it out, just ask, and we may grant the interview. So for the heck of it, I just sent Clinton DeVoe a message, And on my way up Friday, halfway up, I had questions prepared because I knew it might happen, but it all depended on how quick CTV News is going to do the interview with Maxim, because then he'd have to drive in considerable traffic to get back to the hotel. So anyway, she calls and says, it looks like it's going to be a go, and it'll probably be around 4, quarter after 4. So we sat down, chatted for 15 minutes. That night we had the rally. After he did his speeches that I'm still going through, he held like a town hall type question. He didn't take too many questions. He only took like 6, 7 questions, because it was more an introduction to him, questions, and it was his base. Like, it wasn't a town hall open. You had to register for it. I don't think you had to be a member, but members could take guests. And then after the official rally was done, the EDAs met, because I'm a member. I'm actually the president of the Cape Breton Canso EDA. I was the vice president. I didn't want the presidency. And then the president unfortunately had to resign due to work commitments. And then after it was all done, we went into the restaurant, and Maxim was in there, and everyone was talking. There were presidents, vice presidents, board members of EDAs talking with Maxime Bernier, and there was a cake, and it turned out that it was his birthday, and it was his birthday cake. So I had been talking to the communications agent. I'd been chatting with Clinton DeVoe. I had been in contact with people in the camp, like within his circle of management. Most of them are volunteers. That was surprising to find out. And there are people that have worked with him or known him for a long time. So that kind of speaks to his character. And the fact that on his 56th birthday, he spent the day in Nova Scotia, and not once did he mention that it was his birthday. Like, not once did he mention, it's my birthday, look at me. And I don't know, if it wasn't sincere, if he was there for any other reason than to help the Canadian people, I think he would have taken the day off on his birthday and been somewhere else, I don't know, drinking tea or drinking wine or doing what those people do. So as far as the, casual interaction with him, I didn't spend that much time with him one-on-one apart from that interview. But that interview, even though that's on policy, you still get a vibe for the sincerity of a person, for the humility of a person, for the authenticity of a person, for the intelligence of a person. Whether they look you in the eye, I'm looking at both screens here. I'm looking to see, do I think Max is aware of Q? No. And I didn't want to mention Q to Max because I don't think Max is probably somewhere between a blue pill and a pink pill right now. And I'm not sure he's ready for Q bombs. But his sincerity, Duke and I were talking about that this afternoon, how we have a tendency to live in silos, and Max grew up in a political silo, but also grew up in a Quebecois silo. It's like me, I grew up in an Acadian rural silo with a Nova Scotian Cape Breton Islander perspective, and I'm a bit ignorant when it comes to the Ontario reality. And the person that lives in Ontario probably may have a skewed perspective of what life is like in Nova Scotia or what attitudes are like. And when you apply that on the even larger scale, when you look at some of the rabbit holes we've gone down, like QAnon or the JFK or the Gulf of Tonkin or Pearl Harbor or 9/11 or Uranium One or Benghazi, or the list goes on. Some of these guys have never been exposed to that because all they know about foreign relations is what they've gotten from the top bureaucrats that served them as soon as they're elected.
Yeah.
And usually it's the bureaucrats that run the show. Like that interview that I did was telling, because when I asked him about that petition that he refused to sign,
get out of my head. I was just going to bring that up. Get out of my head. Barry, how are you, brother? We're good to see you here. I don't want to interrupt Billy too much. You'll get a kick out of this, Barry. You'll get a kick out of this petition story. And folks, this is so typical. And I knew he was going to bring it up. That's why I said he's in my head. Are you there, Barry?
I am so, and pleasure to be here.
Hi, Barry.
How you doing, Billy?
Good. Sorry I didn't get back to you on Facebook. I catch messages now and then. Sometimes I miss some, and I've been super busy, so I apologize for not getting back to you.
Oh, that's all good, bud.
I appreciate the comments.
Well, I like what you're doing, Billy. You're doing awesome vids, and you really have a way of resonating with people and very soft approach. And sometimes I don't understand how you can keep your voice down when you talk about certain issues, because I think I'd be screaming. But
that's me. That's me.
Me too. I tend to be a little bit more.
Billy's the gentleman.
Yeah. I tend to get a little bit emotional when I start talking about some of the crap I see going on, and Billy manages to keep a very even flow in his conversation, and I think it resonates with people very well. So good work, Billy.
Quick little advertising: if there's any philanthropists out there who want to fund Billy, Duke, and Barry, the three of us would take on a nationwide road trip as a traveling dog and pony show. The three of us together on stage, talking to groups. Could you imagine the insanity that would go on at meetings like that?
We'd be arrested.
I'll tell you what, though, dude. You said that.
We'd be in jail.
You just said that, and I got a bunch of goosebumps, and that's usually a sign that we're talking about something we should be doing.
You know what? I would jump in on that, guys, like hand and fist. If I had the finances to do it, I would. That would be like an ultimate trip, going across the country, really interacting with Canadians. Yeah, who's a millionaire out there? Sends the money.
I would buy a great big bus motorhome, put a lift-up stage that lifts up on the back of it, that you can lay down. You got a traveling stage for rallies and protests, and the three of us could cross the country in luxury. We have a rolling studio with satellite internet hookup and cameras all around the top of the bus, so it's showing everywhere we go as we're going down the road. People can look on the computer and go, "Holy shit, they just went past my mom's house." Right?
And with technology nowadays, you could have a rolling studio. It would be one hell of a thing, though, if you never know if philanthropist is listening, someone that believes in the cause.
Or someone that wins the lottery.
Well, how about we do that if we all buy a lottery ticket every Friday just for $5, and if one of us wins it, we do that.
Yeah, that's not anybody out there listening. Any millionaires out listening? There's got to be one of you out there. And come on, flip us a little bit. We don't ask for much, just a little bit.
I'll tell you something. There's got to be enough. There's got to be enough business owners getting fucked over in Alberta who could pool together and come up with the 50 grand to get that sort of thing started with 2 or 3 of the right Canadian truthers.
I wouldn't take 50 grand, buddy.
No,
I got a buddy.
it wouldn't.
I got a buddy that would lend me a motorhome.
See?
So I got a motorhome starting in British Columbia. I can pick you up in Calgary. We can follow it, get in the trucks, follow it across the country, and then I'll drive it home. A couple thousand, maybe 3 grand in fuel. We got to take care of Herb, of course, and a few other things that are essential for the trip.
Gotta have the chaga.
Gotta have the chaga and the essentials to keep the mentality flowing at the same level. But that would be a blast, man. When I did that trip with Rick Simpson in 2013, Duke, that was the funnest time I ever had in my life. We were driving around British Columbia in an old motorhome, and on the back bumper, we said, "Honk if you love medical cannabis oil," and all the way around British Columbia, all we had was beep, 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 beep. And the police would get it. The police, I'll tell you, they'd get it behind the motorhome. And I'd watch them. They'd get in behind the motorhome. They'd follow us for a little while. They'd follow us for a little while, and then they'd go away. And I don't know why, because Rick was very well known for his outspokenness on cannabis oil back at the time. And I see he was on their radars, but they never bothered us. So it was a great trip, guys. So let's do it.
Rick Simpson's originally from Nova Scotia.
He is so, buddy. He's a great man.
So in the Facebook chat room, Ron Armstrong says, "I'm a drummer. Sorry, I'm broke." Ron, I got a riddle. I got a riddle for you, Ron. What do you call a drummer without a girlfriend? Homeless.
Hey, I see Andre Soucy says, ask Numbnuts Trudeau for a grant. I wonder if we can get in on that 600 million.
Hey, citizen journalism. Oh wait, we'd have to register with the CRTC. There's no way they'd approve of me.
Yeah, we wouldn't make that list, guys. So let's throw that out the window. Yeah,
all right, so let's get
in all seriousness.
Let's get back to, in all seriousness, I would love to have the ability to do what we're talking about doing. Yeah. But in all seriousness, let's get back to Billy and Max.
Well, Max in general and Canadians in general, because that was the underlying theme of everything I saw from that man. Like, I ended up going back to my room with his birthday cake because nobody wanted it anymore. They knew I was there with my kids, and they said, take this for your kids and your wife. So that's what I did. You know, like, I'm like, well, if this guy becomes prime minister, I can say I ate his 56th birthday cake.
Yeah, taking a picture, you could put it on the internet later. Sell it.
Yeah,
put it in the freezer. Put it in the freezer.
Yeah, never thought of doing that. Sell it on eBay in 20 years for $50,000.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on this. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Billy.
Go ahead, buddy. You know
Prince.
how to do that.
Yeah, I know how to do it, and you know that I'm good at it, and you know how to avoid it, you sneaky bastard. You figured me out a couple of weeks ago and pulled a quick dip. Barry Prince is the typical Canadian. I don't know too much about Max. I'm leery of somebody new. What can you tell Barry to convince him that Max Bernier... what can you tell Barry to convince him of, just work with me here, Barry, okay?
Okay.
We're gonna change you. We're gonna change you from being the stoned old hippie hanging on the side of a mountain into Joe Average Canadian, okay? Work with me here.
Who won the Billy, game last night?
What can you tell Barry, Joe Average Canadian, who's kind of sitting on the fence thinking, who the fuck is this new guy who's not really a new guy, but he's talking shit we've never heard before? What would you tell these people like Barry that you think might convince them that Max Bernier is for real and he's worth seriously looking into and thinking about?
Well, it would depend on whether or not they watched the interview I did with him or not, but that interview was pretty telling. The two questions I asked him in English would not be allowed to air on any national network in Canada.
Oh no.
And Fox News might be the only one that may play it in the US. So the fact that he was willing to answer now, Clinton DeVoe wasn't sure if those questions were, he was like, Then the communications officer wasn't sure, and then I was like, you know what? I'll give him the courtesy, and I'll tell him before we go on camera that I'm dropping these bombs, because I was going to drop them anyway. But I want to talk. I want to talk to him personally, because again, if I would have stopped at the communications officer and not talked to him personally before the interview started, I probably wouldn't have asked those two questions, because she told me to go easy and not to do that. You know, so, but with him, it was like, you can ask me anything. And he said that at his rally after. He said, the difference with me and all the other politicians is that I want to speak to Canadians' intelligence. It's like when he was asked if he'd repeal the gender identity bill, and he said yes, and then someone asked him why, and he said, because I had a chat with Jordan Peterson. Well, have you ever heard Jordan Peterson's argument for the whole teaching of transgenderism?
I follow him extensively, Billy.
Yeah, very
smart man.
Oh yeah, so if there's anyone out there wondering, you know, you don't hear Justin Trudeau quoting Jordan Peterson, and what Maxime Bernier was saying is that he's appealing to the intellect of Canadians, because let's face it, the average Canadian middle class worker who has to manage the limited income that you have and the massive expenses that you have, you have to be pretty intelligent and you have to be pretty witty to navigate through all that and come out the other end smelling okay.
Well, just to come out the other end and still have a roof over your head and food on your table at the end of the month. Like,
right. And then he also recognizes social media. Like, you're talking to a guy that's talking about cutting the CBC. Like, he said, we got to start saving money. Someone yelled out, cut the CBC. He started laughing. He says, yes, absolutely. We're going to cut the CBC. And then he says, how else could we save some money? And someone says, I don't know, Canada Post. He's like, another one. We're going to cut Canada Post and privatize it. And everyone's in the room. Everyone's in the room like, woo, everyone's clapping. And it was just refreshing to see someone, and he's got this humility about him. And I know how many hours that guy's putting in. And I get, it might be because of my relation. My cousin used to be a politician, and a provincial politician. He was a high-ranking minister in the provincial government in Nova Scotia. And although I disagree with him on certain policies, methodologies, etc., I have to respect the immense work that he used to put into doing things, and the number of hours that he used to put into doing things. And what I'm seeing with Maxime Bernier, and what I'm being told by people like Clinton DeVoe and other assistants that he has, is this guy's putting in, anywhere from 12 to 16, sometimes 18-hour days. I mean, he granted me an interview. He did an interview with something the truth in Western Canada. He's another Canadian truther, and I forget what the name of the channel is now, and I apologize for that. But he granted, and he mentioned that when he said he was going to cut the CBC. He says we got to make it more equitable for the social media people out there. He says there has to be a balance between the mainstream media and social media. He talked about fake news. He talked about how they slant stories. Like he's talking in a way that the others aren't. Like eliminating foreign aid, saying we'll go help people when they're in crisis, like when they're in real crisis. If a country suffers some natural disaster and there's a humanitarian crisis, we'll go help. But we'll pay attention how that money's spent, and we're not just going to send money frivolously to dictators all over Africa so that they're going to supposedly fight climate change or build highways.
Yeah, exactly. Let's stop building streets in Yemen, and let's stop funneling money through to terrorist organizations through the Canadian government, which we know is going on.
Well, he didn't know that.
That's all got to come to a stop. That's one of the questions I would have put to him, Billy. Is got into his head about exactly what he sees going on in the intelligence organizations and exactly what they're exposing to us. And are they coming front? They're not.
Well,
they're
I asked him about Tom Quiggin, if he knew about Tom Quiggin and the letter that he had sent to the Governor General and the Auditor General, the Attorney General, and he had not heard of that. And then I didn't really get a chance to talk to him about it again, but I'm going to send an email to Clinton DeVoe and put him up to speed on it, because Maxime Bernier put his feet to the fire on that. It's Tom Quiggin is legit.
Billy, if you've got a place to send emails and video clips, I can send you 30-second to 8-minute long clips of Tom Quiggin hammering different subjects.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
Please.
I will start sending them to your email,
do
buddy.
that, please.
I've got them.
And then right now, Maxime Bernier is sitting as the leader of the fastest growing political party in the history of Canadian politics.
Well,
yeah, they raised $250,000 in 24 hours.
Yeah, after they became official party status, he raised $600,000 before even attaining official status. He got 600. Yeah, right. 600. That's $600,000 with no tax receipts.
Exactly, and people were still willing to donate. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to interrupt here for a second and say thank you to Bobby Grace in the YouTube chat room. Says they're sending some donations to kickstart our cross Canada campaign here. So
okay, let's do this.
Hey, I'll take donations. I had a donation come into my PayPal last month, and it's still actually, some of it's sitting there. I've used some of it to order 100 DVDs, because I hand out DVDs, like Barry, the DVDs that I sent to you. I hand those out when I'm doing sidewalk protests, right? people stop at a traffic light, they open their window to say, "What are you protesting about?" And I stuff a DVD in the window. You're dumb enough to open the window, you're going to eat this thing. I'm stuffing it in there.
You know, we really have a problem with media in Canada, and there's a lot of Canadians really, even at this point, really don't know what's going on. Like, I mean, they have an idea that something nefarious is going on in our government, but they really don't get the depth of the problems we have. And you know what? One of the most powerful tools, I'm doing this myself right now, guys, is I got my son. He's on the internet right now. My son's actually getting involved now. And we're making up a list of 15 of the most damning things that Trudeau's done since he's come to power. And we're going to back it up with hardcore information, sites that people can go to vet the information to find out that's true. And we're going to get about 1,000 of those printed up, and we're going to walk around town. We're going to hand it to people. Because a lot of people really don't get it. The media has done an incredible job of covering up what's going on in our society. People, I honestly believe that if every Canadian right now in this country really knew what was going on inside our government, we would see the uprising that we need right now to stop this madness. But that's something that I'm doing this week, Duke. And of course, when I'm doing that, I'm going to be wearing my Trudeau. I got my oh, by the way, I got my T-shirts updated now. They're 2019. I had to get 3 more made up. Cost me $75. But boy, I'll tell you, got to wear them every day, guys.
You know what's sad though, Barry, is it's not just the Canadian people. It's not just if the Canadian people knew what was going on in politics. It's if politicians knew what was going on in politics. Because we never really finished that thought on that petition that I asked Bernie about. Did you watch that video, the interview I did where I asked him about that petition that he didn't sign?
Yeah, I saw that.
What he said, that it was the progressive conservative position at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was toeing the party line.
The interesting part about that petition, Billy, is the fact that it never made it to his desk.
Right. That's what he told me before the interview. When we were talking before the interview, he told me that he didn't recall ever seeing that petition because he said the petition was written right. He even said that in the interview. He says, what you said to me, he says, what you have there is absolutely right. He says, we don't even have to write any law. The law's already on the books.
Yep. And your petition quotes that. Yeah.
So right now he's not in any kind of position to call any kind of inquiry, because to do that, he'd need the votes. He doesn't have. So if this guy becomes prime minister and he manages somehow to get that many people elected right across the country, it's going to be a tough task. But when you consider what he's done in 4 months, he's got more members. He's got more than double the members. No, I think it's double the members that Elizabeth May's got in the Green Party. And she's been around for 30 years.
Yep. No, I see the party growing in leaps and bounds, Billy. I do.
Like right now, he said he wants every EDA, if we could sell 100 memberships before May, every EDA sell 100 memberships, we'd be at almost 70,000, over 70,000 members. And the Conservatives have 120,000. They've been around for,
eons.
Yeah, century.
Yeah, too long.
So when you think about that, in 4 months, what he's accomplished and what everyone involved has accomplished. And Friday night, I'll tell you, there was 300 people there, and I bet you there was no more than 10 to 15 suits and ties. The rest were steel-toed boots. You could tell that they're blue-collar workers. It was quite the atmosphere, and everyone on the same page. Like 2 other YouTubers were there. There was one godless woman was there. She asked a question on the danger of political Islam. He made it clear that there was no place in Canada for them, that anyone that's overseas right now fighting for ISIS has to stay there, that they shouldn't be welcome back to Canada. Any ISIS fighter in Canada should be picked up and tried. Well, then he must be,
Billy, then if that's the case, then he must be fully aware of how far Islam has infiltrated our government already and exactly what is going on inside our government.
Probably.
I would have put a couple other real hardcore questions to him, but I actually pursued him a couple times for an interview. I never got back to him again, which was my problem, but I did get a chance to talk to Max twice. And the first time I talked to him, I really kind of, I was in a pissed off mood. I was just boiling over what I seen going on in my country, and I reached out to him, and he returned my phone call, and I talked to him for about 15, 20 minutes, and I really poured it out right from my bottom of my heart what I saw going into Canada right now, and the man acknowledged everything I said. Then I had a second conversation. In both conversations, I got the feeling I was talking to a real individual, but I still, in my life, Billy, I'm just so leery of any politician because they're professional liars. But I'm coming to the point now where I actually am believing that Max is the real deal, and we got to get behind somebody. We have really in this country right now, we don't have a choice. We really don't. Anybody that would support Max or Andrew Scheer and where the party line that he's towing right now, if you're paying attention to it, you're just going to get another Trudeau for 4 years.
Thank you.
We need a change. Well, of course we are. I mean, they're both globalists. They're both two heads of the same snake. It's the same thing that's been going on in Canada for the last how many years? So now we have the rise of another party in Canada that's actually laying out solid, down-to-earth, fundamental, strong conservative values. And if anything, this is bringing the conservative, so-called conservative party back in line a little bit, because what Maxine is saying is resonating with Canadians. I've looked at his platform, and it all makes sense to me.
You know what else is funny in that is that there are because even someone who would have been a liberal in the 1970s is more conservative than even the Conservative Party is today.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
what would the Liberal Party been called back in 1970? Nazis.
Pretty
How
much.
did they get in here?
Pretty
I thought we killed those guys.
So that's kind of ironic when you think about it. So Bernier, I can understand completely why he's growing, and I can understand why people are quietly supporting him, because he used two Trumpisms. Like he referred to Trump a couple times in his speech on Friday. Like once he spoke about dealing with Trump to resolve the third safe country clause for immigration. He's like, don't tell me that someone coming up from New York is in danger of their lives. He's like, these people got to go back. Like, there's just certain things.
When's the last time you were in New York City? You're in danger of your life.
Or Chicago. Go walk the streets of Chicago, man.
Actually, I got to be fair. I was in Chicago not that long ago, back maybe 10, 15 years ago, right in Cicero. And it's not like it was back in the 80s. I was there in the 80s, and dude, in Cicero, even the white lines down the middle of the road were painted black. But now, well, okay, like I say, 15 years ago in the early 2000s, totally different than what it was like in the 80s. So Chicago ain't that bad. And New York City, believe it or not, yeah, it's got some shitty neighborhoods, but so does Toronto and Halifax, right?
Exactly.
Like I've met some really cool people. I met one old guy in New York City one time walking his dog just off of Fifth Avenue. We stood and talked for a while, probably 10, 15 minutes or so. He reminded me of Oscar Madison from The Odd Couple, right? Just one of these old bachelors living on his own in downtown Manhattan, like right in downtown New York, right 3 blocks from Times Square kind of thing.
There's a difference between violent crime and left-leaning, lunatic-filled cities like New York or Chicago.
Or Toronto.
But, yeah, well, you're seeking asylum. Usually it's when you're living in a war-torn country and you're being targeted for whatever reason,
I agree with you 100%. There isn't one single person walking across our Canadian borders from the United States that can claim to me realistically that their life is in danger. Shut the fuck up, walk back over to the Piggly Wiggly, get a hot dog, and go home.
And what people will realize, I mean, most of the people that came were of Somali descent, and who's the Minister of Immigration?
Imagine that. A Somalian.
Yeah, exactly.
Coincidence. Just a
most
coincidence.
of them are Muslim.
Well, exactly.
Very, very, very violent people.
Yes, in
and
Somalia,
we're letting them into the country.
in Somalia, 90% of the girls there are forced for the female genital mutilation.
Yep.
It is actually one of the highest countries in the world for female genital mutilation.
Yeah.
It is. They're
And
also
honor
they're
killings
right on
are
the top.
higher.
Well, they're also right on the top of the list of countries that agree with wife beating. With I mean, you can go on the internet and look at these people's opinions in all these countries around the world and what they support and what they don't support.
Yeah.
And boy, if that doesn't wake you up, and we're letting these people into our country right now, you think it's going to turn out good?
Very legitimate. Like the Pew Research Center's got some mind-boggling information on Islam, and like people think that radical, the guys that are going to blow themselves up. Well, radical, it's all about perspective because it's relative, right?
Yeah.
What's radical? What's radical to Canadians? I asked that to people. I'm like, well, do you feel that your sister getting raped because her jeans are too tight and she provoked someone to be so aroused that they had no choice but to rape her? I was like, do you think that's compatible with, like, do you think that's radical compared to what we grew up with? They're like, well, yeah. I was like, well, what if I told you that in like over 50% of the countries where Sharia law is rule, that can happen, and 95% of the time we get away with it, and the woman will get stoned to death.
For committing adultery.
Right, because she can't prove that she was raped, so therefore she's admitting she had sex out of wedlock. Therefore,
or they have what religion practices honor killings?
Right, killing your own kids.
Yeah, the video that you and I did, and then you played the Tom Quiggin clip about Ontario being #1 in your video. Somebody commented, I forget whether it was on your YouTube channel or my YouTube channel, commented about that and told about an honor killing in her apartment building where the father and the brother
threw them off the roof,
threw them off the 10th floor balcony, then went downstairs, grabbed her dead body, dragged her back into the apartment and threw her on the couch and called the cops.
Unbelievable.
Hello? So now, Billy, I'm going to ask you the question that I left you before you went to meet Max Bernier. Our last conversation ended with me asking you a question, and you said you needed some time to contemplate the answer to that. And Barry, I wouldn't mind your answer on this very same topic. I asked the question of a gentleman I had on with me Friday night, Daryl Inkster from the Yellow Vest of Dauphin, Manitoba. I asked him this question, and I asked YV Canuck that I had here on my show a couple of weeks ago. I asked him the same question. Billy, you got a get out of jail free card last time. This time I want an answer. And Barry, I'll give you a couple of days if you want to come back with an answer. But here's the question. This country exercises, it recognizes, it provides freedom of religion. My question is, when that religion and the practices adhered to by that religion are contradictory to everything your country, your society, your laws, and your lifestyle are based on, should that religion continue to be granted the privilege of freedom?
No,
absolutely not. All Islam is, gentlemen, is a tool being used to invade and divide and destroy Western culture, Western civilizations. That's the bottom line. Take a look what's going on in Europe. They're 5 years ahead of us.
Tool. It's
all of it. It is, man. They are in cooperation with the gentlemen behind the curtains that are pushing Agenda 21, Agenda 30, and all Islam is the tool. They have formed an alliance. The Pope is involved. It's all a giant party, and they plan this out, and they know exactly what they're going to do to manipulate society, and a lot of society's falling for it.
Now, Barry, I learned something, and I mentioned this to Duke earlier today. Because the question I thought you were going to ask me, because part of the question you just asked me is something I asked everyone on Twitter at one point too, is what happens there. But the question I thought you were going to ask me was, how much time do we have before bloodshed's necessary? And after this rally, because what I saw at this rally was the blue collar type, okay, the type that would probably go hunting for deer or fishing for fish, that were at this Maxime Bernier rally. Those are the guys and gals that would defend to the death what it is we want Canada to be. So if Bernier, if somehow we can manage to get him elected and he actually keeps the promises, kind of like the anomaly Trump is in the U.S. If he was that anomaly in Canada, the difference is Bernier's been a politician, but everyone is capable of having a fucking conscience, a crisis of conscience, where you're seeing it happen, and he expressed this.
Hey,
he said that
perfect pancake has to be flipped.
Right, and he said it in Halifax. He said this is the most exciting time for him in politics because he had a choice to make. He said either quit politics altogether because it was so freaking corrupt from every end, because he really believed in the Conservative Party, but I found out on the weekend how that man lost. And the fact that he stayed with the Conservative Party for as long as he did after he lost the way he did in that leadership race shocks me. And I'm guessing that you remember when he was accused of leaving documents with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend had connections to the Hells Angels?
Yeah.
You know how we speak of honeypots a lot and how politicians get set up?
Yeah.
I think he got set up to be compromised and then cleared his name and realized just how fucking corrupt these people are. And he decided, that's it, I'm going to stand up against it. I'm going to form my own party and give it all I've got. Because like I say, if it's a con job and he's really just a plant to split votes and paid off by the Liberals, etc., 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 would they really go to the extent of having him out on his 56th birthday, working 16, 18-hour day, rallying patriots in Halifax, Nova Scotia? I don't think, that's my rationale behind it. I mean, I've never really trusted a politician, and I've always found that politicians are sketchy. They don't allow you to ask questions. They'll avoid it. They'll change the subject. With him, I persisted. Like, even the thing about the Queen, about changing from a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah, 3 times you went back at him on it. And different angles each time. You played it well, my friend. Kudos to you. I put a bug in your ear and you ran with it. Thank you so much for that. And you did a great job.
The one question I would like to ask them, Billy, is if his platform, if his party would support recall legislation. So we have a mechanism in Canada to actually get the government out of power if they go rogue and absolutely are, Trudeau. We have a mechanism to actually get them out of power, and we don't right now. So if a party was to say that, and they were willing to give the citizens that option, that would speak kudos to me as the man's true intentions. I'd like that question put to him. I really would. I put it to a couple members of his party that are actually now running, and I put that idea in their head. That would resonate with Canadians, my friend. It would resonate with me.
Big time.
It'd show me that he's the real deal.
Why don't you send me an email on that? I'll forward it to Clinton DeVoe, and I'll tell him that, I'll explain to him who you are, how I know you, that I respect you, because of the way I conducted myself in that interview, and because of the way I approached it, and because I didn't really softball him, I took it. I kind of took it easy, but I didn't.
You took it polite.
Politely.
That's what you did. You hit him hard, but you hit him polite. Like we said earlier today, Billy, you didn't take the gloves off, but you wore lightweight 8-ounce gloves, and you hit him.
Yeah, I suppose. And he took it well, and he wasn't shifty like he did. There wasn't too much he and and ah, and there was he didn't have cue cards. There was no teleprompter. There was there was nothing. This was, I had my questions. I ran them by him 5 minutes before we did the interview. So, you know, like, he didn't have a week to prepare for these questions. Like, I kind of told his communications director, I kind of told her what I was going to talk about the Queen, but I never forwarded her my questions.
Uh-huh.
And they
there's a bunch of people joining in chat, guys. Rudy Bruce is out there. How you doing, Rudy? Gary Gilbert just joined in. How you doing, Gary? I'm sorry to interrupt you guys.
No, that's fine.
Just interacting with chat here.
Yeah, someone should be paying attention to chat. I don't do it enough.
I'm kind of half watching both chats here. Finally found how to change name in the YouTube chat. Max could have kept his 6-figure fake conservative spot. He's being blackmailed, but he is no plant. His leaker girlfriend is one I would slurp. Okay, we won't read the rest of that. Co-host Slayer says there's no Canadian politician with Trump balls, not even close. Canadian conservative politicians will also collude with Islam. Believe it. John Secret says Scheer loves Muslims. The YouTube chat's pretty busy. I'm impressed. Thanks, YouTube folks. I'm glad to see my followers on YouTube are increasing. Thank you. Much appreciated, folks. And what do we got going on over here in Facebook? Denise Nicole Weeb says Scheer is for the Paris climate, bringing more in and keeping sovereignty. Ron Banerjee says the problem is not with Max, the problem is with people running his EDAs. Talk to Lee Stewart. I see Lee all the time, Ron. She's yeah. Well, I can tell you the EDA that Billy's running, I don't have any questions that it's going to be run right to the penny exactly the way it should be. And if Billy's any example of the kind of people that Max has working with him, I feel pretty confident in his party's ability to keep things pretty tight.
Well, for example, every EDA, we have to find an auditor. We had to open a bank account.
Yeah.
We had to sign legal documents. We had to register with Elections Canada. And now we have the ability to sell memberships because we're an official party now. We have an ability to issue tax credits. And as president, I'm legally responsible. Now, there are other people right now on the board that are asking me to please consider running as the candidate. And I'm like, Now, the thing is I wasn't sure how they'd react to that, but they don't. Maxime Bernier, his attitude is, listen, I've got a platform. It's an economic platform. If I win the prime ministership, my first mandate is all about rebuilding the Canadian economy. And that question on the Queen, what I found interesting is twice in there, he kind of said, well, it certainly won't be something we'll entertain in the first mandate. and he said that twice, and I'm like,
yeah.
I should have, looking back on it, I said, so second mandate, but I didn't think of it at the time, like I should have, but I didn't.
That's why hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, but then I was like, well, you're going to say that you're going to pledge allegiance to the people of Canada over the Queen. However it is, I got to get you to say it. And I don't know if you saw his reaction, but in person, his reaction was genuine. It was almost like he thought I was ridiculous asking the question, because to him, the reason he named the People's Party of Canada the People's Party of Canada was because he actually treats it that way, like it's the People's Party. It was always about we. Like it was very rarely I. It was often in the third person, you. Look what you've done. Look what we've done. And that's what I found. And then another thing I found out, I didn't know this, the leadership campaign for the Conservative Party, you know how they talk about the dairy cartel hijacking that election? I was wondering how the fuck they figured that out. And it had to do with the number of votes that were cast compared to the number of members that there were leading up to, like, just prior to that election campaign. And it turned out it was 138,000 votes casted and 130,000 members. So how's that possible? And then...
hang on. Let's back up and I want to repeat that. There were 130,000 registered voters. In the end, there were 138,000 votes cast. Now, where did those extras come from, Billy? I know you're going to tell us.
Well, the thing is, there are a few possibilities. One thing is that employees of big dairy cartel members, to the tune of 7,000, registered in the week prior to this leadership election, and a lot of them were card-carrying NDP, card-carrying Liberal, but however, like, you can make assumptions, no one can prove it, but I'm assuming what went on there was the boss says, I better see your name on a list of Conservative Party members, and I better see you at this election that we're having. The other problem that there was is that the auditing firm, I'm pretty sure it's Deloitte and Touche, I could be wrong, but it's one of those high-profile auditing firms that were supposed to count the votes, were called off by the party that night. So instead of an outside auditing firm counting the votes, it was the Conservative Party themselves that counted the votes, and they counted them twice. Now they had 12 run-up elections to the final vote. Okay, there was 12 run-up votes that day. Bernier won every single one of them. He lost on the 13th ballot. And on that 13th ballot, he lost by 0.6%. So
doesn't sound fishy at all.
So they counted the ballots twice, and then destroyed them the same night. And then everyone was in shock. Like everyone, all the MP, everyone was in shock. So apparently, people within the party went to the auditing firm. And you know how they call them corrupt? You know, when he left Bernier and he said they're corrupt? Well, that's what he was referring to without going into too many details. And that's
rigged to the core, Billy.
Wasn't it? So,
yeah, it was rigged to the core.
So that was an indication to me that they didn't want Bernier there because he was going to stir the pot in a way that the Conservative Party did not want it being stirred.
Andrew Scheer was their chosen man.
That's the only thing I can see.
Well, so can I. If you look at it realistically and you put all those facts in your head and roll them around, what do you come up with? You come up with bullshit. Period. Excuse me. How else can you call it? Got to call it bullshit.
You know, so you put all those things together, and then I have the experience with the interview. I've got the fact that rally, everything he said were the right things. The meet and greet after. I mean, the guy talked to people like he's known them forever. Like
Bernier come out and really stand up against the UN immigration pact, and up to that point, the Conservatives were crickets. They had nothing to say about it. All of a sudden, they piped in and they said, "Well, now wait a second, we got a strong stance against this." Well, that's because what Bernier was saying was resonating with Canada, and they weren't hearing it from the so-called Conservative Party until they had their backs up against the wall. And then Michelle came out with her big speech. Can't you guys see through the? I mean, can't you see the trees for the forest? I can. I mean, and I'm not a smart guy.
Bernier quoted Scheer. I guess Scheer at a rally last year somewhere. I guess, and he quoted him. And I'm looking for. I got the footage. I'll be putting that together this week. Tomorrow, I should be able to finish it tomorrow. So I'll have another video coming out tomorrow. And he goes on the record talking about how Scheer had come out and said that the Liberals had gone so far left and the NDP were so far left that the Conservatives could comfortably occupy anything to the middle over. And then Bernier made the point how Scheer still doesn't really have any kind of real policies on anything because he's too busy doing fucking focus groups trying to figure out what the best special interest groups to pander to are so he can buy votes in the same way he did with the dairy cartel. And I know that goes on because I saw it go on a micro level. I saw it go on a provincial level. I saw it go on even you'll see certain provincial politicians collaborating with certain federal politicians, and they're always collaborating together with the same businesses, and it's always the same companies and organizations getting grants, and it's always
community groups.
Right. And so when I asked him about ACOA and those organizations, what he said made perfect sense. The guy wants a flat business tax of 10%, and anyone who's got RRSPs should be thrilled at this one. He wants to get rid of the capital gains tax.
Which means those of you who have invested in rental properties, you went out in the late 90s or the early 2000s and you took out a mortgage and you bought a home that you rent out and you make a little bit of money each month, you won't be paying capital gains on that.
Exactly.
It becomes just like your home, no capital gains. So if you bought the house 5 years ago and you paid $280,000 for it here in St. Catharines, and now the average price is anywhere from $390 to $470, you can flip that thing and keep all that profit with no capital gains if Bernier gets elected.
Exactly.
That's huge, people. And if you own a small company, let's say you're like Mike Traherne and you own a small trucking company, or you're like the guy I work for. He owns a small machining company. I think he's got 11 employees. Well, just imagine if the taxes on his company were cut from the current 17 to 19% down to 10. That makes a huge difference in his ability to pay his staff raises. Hello? We're talking small business here. We're talking the kind of guys that 90% of Canadians work for. Most of us work for somebody who has mortgaged their ass to the wall to start a business and try and be an independent, free person, not cowtailing to some corporate unionized structure. And you, along with 15 or 20 other guys, go into work 5 days a week for some guy who doesn't end up at the end of the month with much more money than what you end up with.
Right.
Like, a lot of employees don't realize when your employer takes $1 off your paycheck to send to Canada Pension Plan, he has to take $1.40 out of his own bank account and send it in along with your dollar to the Canada Pension Plan. When you go to the hospital and get free Ontario health insurance coverage, guess who pays for it? Your employer. It used to be when I was young and started work, Barry, you're out west, but here in Ontario, you probably remember the employee paid all of the OHIP. Then it got, in the 70s with Trudeau, it got split. Or maybe it might have been the early 80s. They split it. The employee and the employer paid a share each. Now the employer pays all of your OHIP fees. They pay into Canada Pension Plan 40% more than the employee. So your $15 an hour is costing him $16.40 because he's paying $1 or whatever, $1.40 on every buck that you pay in income tax. Don't tell me these small businesses won't appreciate a 10% tax rate instead of the 17, 19, and in some cases 24% tax on some of the commodities and products that we buy as consumers. Like Barry, you can tell people, you'll confirm for me, any business that has an increase in cost of producing their product transfers that cost into the price of the product. Am I right?
Well, of course, you got to keep the profit margins where they are, and if they start to fall, you put it on the consumer.
Exactly.
So we're gonna, watch, guys, what happens in the next 3 or 4 months with the carbon tax. You're gonna see a mass increase. That carbon tax alone is the biggest scam that's ever been played on us.
What we're going to see with the carbon tax, I got into it today with a woman commenting on a post that I had put up on Facebook, and we went back and forth. I think there was like 19 replies back and forth, and she was on about how voting for Scheer is just going to divide the vote and let Trudeau win, and she's not going to follow me anymore, and how can I not be for Scheer? It's like, darling, one of her posts was, Scheer is against the carbon tax. And I said, yes, he's against the carbon tax, but he's in favor of the Paris Climate Accord, which means he's going to take the carbon tax, chop it up, rename it into 6 other kinds of tax, apply them to different levels of manufacturing, so the plastics industry that makes the panels for the dash and the doors and the headliners in your cars, those are all going to go up in price, and so is the price of your car. Okay?
Exactly.
Because they're going to get taxed as a vinyl product, and it's environmentally unfriendly. So that will get taxed, and you're going to pay the friggin' tax one way or another, because Scheer is a globalist, and he's going to screw you, just like Mulroney did, just like Harper did, just like Joe Clark did. Like,
I got to step out for 2 seconds here. My dog's got to take a wee. Be back in a second.
All right, buddy.
Hey, Duke, your mug is not on your Facebook feed.
Come here.
No, I know. It's just you guys right now. I just flipped it over.
Okay.
I just flipped it over. I'm playing editor here with OBS.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were not.
Yeah.
I saw someone in the Facebook chat. I saw someone in the Facebook chat mention that they were tired of these small parties, these small splinter parties, splitting votes and such.
Yes, I think I saw that. That was Virginia.
Yeah. People got to realize that this guy's only been at it for 4 freaking months. 4 months, and I'd say within another month, I bet you he'll have close to $1 million raised, and I bet you he'll have his membership close to 70,000 within a month and a half. And he may very well have candidates in all 338 ridings. And if this keeps growing exponentially the way it is, and he keeps speaking this language and doing it in the manner that he's doing it, I think we could see some real change. If he could somehow miraculously pull off a majority government, you would see change in Canada. I think that would absolutely shock the pants off of people.
I believe a majority government for Max Bernier in his first attempt at running for office would be a historical event that would just fuck with so many leftist, socialist, NDP liberal heads. You'd hear little miniature explosions going off all over the country as their heads pop. Like a teenager popping a zit on their forehead. There'd be NDPers all over the place going, boom!
There'd be flash flooding on the streets from all the snowflakes melting, Duke.
Well, yeah. Maxim, without being too arrogant about it, was explaining how after he left the Conservative Party, he made friends with Elizabeth May. because
Elizabeth May, what a work of art she is, man.
He's like
how'd she ever get in there?
Yeah, he was like, it was pretty lonely in there. He's like, it's pretty lonely in there for the two of us. He says, so we decided to get along. He says, and the only way we could get along was to not talk politics.
How's your kids?
Yeah, that would be like.
What's your dog's name?
That would be like putting Winston Churchill and Adolf Hitler in the same train car on the subway in Toronto. And so, boys, what do you want to talk about?
It was so funny.
Well, they're both holding guns underneath their satchels.
Yeah.
And then that's when he kind of turned it around to remind everyone how, we're new, but he put it into perspective. And he said he was only a couple months in, and Elizabeth May had asked him, like, at the beginning of every week, how many members you got now? He'd say 10,000. The next week, how many members you got now? Yeah, 15,000. How many members you got now? I got 20,000. Finally, he asked her, he says, Elizabeth, how many members do you have in the Green Party? She says, 19,000. And that's over 30 years in. So, when you consider that, if all the people would focus on the platform and because you can look at Scheer and how weak he is on all kinds of different issues, but if you look at the history of both parties, they both got us into the freaking mess we're in. Now, people could go with the stereotype and say, well, Bernier is a fucking Quebecer, and Quebecers have always, Trudeau fucked us over, Mulroney screwed us over. Some Chrétien, Martin.
Yeah.
I
will not tell you a lie.
The list goes on, but you've never heard those people go to Quebec.
He reminded me of Popeye the Sailor Man, right? All he needed was a little corncob pipe hanging out of it. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Doot, doot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Are we supposed to be doing a serious show here, guys? I thought we were supposed to be doing a serious show.
Yeah, but you got to throw in some comedy there too, right? There,
it's Canada.
Hey, buddy, if we don't laugh at the insanity we see right now, we would go crazy, okay?
Well, exactly.
All right, guys, I'll tell you what. We've been 90 minutes on here. Billy, you've had a long weekend. I'm going to pose one last question to the two of you.
We're having too much fun.
Well,
you're not leaving, dude. Come on, we're just getting warmed up, buddy. I'm rolling a hot one here.
What the hell?
Drinking my second cup of coffee. Where are you going?
Well,
what the hell are you talking about?
All right. I'll tell you what.
We'll go to the top. Let's just go to the top of the hour. That's 11 o'clock, Duke. I know you're turning into a pumpkin, so we'll let you go. Okay.
My alarm clock goes off at 5 in the morning, so it's...
Excuses.
All right, so
you're a Canadian.
We'll do 2 questions and end it by 11. There was one I just had for you, and I forgot it, and now I've still got number 2 in my head, but there was one I had for you first that I wanted to pose, and I can't even remember what it was now. Brain fart. See, we were having so much fun, it slid right off the side of the roller coaster. Okay, so Barry first, and then Billy. Both your opinions on this. Our government goes halfway around the world, rescues an 18-year-old girl from the ideology of Islam and brings her here to Canada. And at the same time, this very same government is telling the citizens that it governs that we should love, respect, and tolerate the very same ideology that we had to spend taxpayers' money to go and rescue this girl from. Barry, you first. Your take on this whole scenario.
I really had a hard time trying to understand that one myself, dude. It just, I mean, come on. We're Islamophobic if we talk about it, but when she talks about it and comes here, she's a hero. I mean, ask Trudeau about that. I'd like an explanation from the government on that exactly, because I am very, very confused on that one. Very confused.
They'd never ever answer it. They'd never ever answer the question.
Well, no, I mean, just take a look at what Trudeau did the other night in that town hall, man. He's a professional dancer. That guy, man. He is good. He is good. I can't, that's, it just, what do I say about that, Duke? I mean, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? It really does speak for itself. It really shows you what this government is all about. And the fact that Freelance stood there with her and had her arm around her, it's like they were lifetime friends.
I love you. We're going to go make porn movies together.
I mean, can you say Photoshop? I mean, how obvious is it, folks?
Photo ops.
Yeah, photo op, big time. It's getting close to election time. He just gave Quebec another $140 million to look after the immigration programs or the problems, of course. But
sometimes I wonder.
Your answer, Billy. You can answer that one now.
Well, sometimes I wonder if the whole QAnon thing where they talk about you're watching a movie and how they've got people with sealed indictments playing parts to take down the left wing amongst themselves. It's this far out conspiracy that I got. And sometimes you wonder because they do things that are so outlandish. They just gave every single patriotic Canadian the ammunition to logically destroy them in any kind of intellectual debate on the subject. That's what they did, because anyone with logic, when you lay it out the way Duke just did and the way you just did, anyone with logic listening to that is going to go, yeah, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
Surprise.
This poor girl, we have to go rescue her from the evils of Islam that are going to kill her. But you dumb fucks have to accept Islam.
It's like Jim Acosta standing beside.
My socks?
It's like Jim Acosta standing beside the border wall fence and saying, "Boys, is it ever tranquil here?" Same thing. Shot himself in the foot or what, man? Oh, you gotta laugh.
It's unbelievable the level of hypocrisy and the double standards, and they take for granted. They think that Canadians are dumb. They have to. That's what Bernier. That's what Bernier was saying. Bernier is like, well,
Billy, the level of hypocrisy is nothing. The level of stupidity is absolutely fucking beyond belief. Because stupid fucking Canadians sit out there going, "Oh, isn't Trudeau wonderful? He saved her from Islam. Have you met my new neighbor, Mohammed?" That's Canadians! They're dumb as a fucking post! The average Canadian has the IQ of a tree stump. That means 50% of the population is fucking dumber than that. The only smart ones are the ones that pay attention to people like you and me and Barry and other truthers. We're a very small minority, brother.
Yeah, but it's growing.
We're the nutcases, man.
It's growing, Duke.
I realize that.
It is growing. I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised with the turnout in Halifax. I did not think you could get 300 people. Like, don't forget, like, it's not a big population. All of Nova Scotia has only got 1 million people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a concept for you folks, especially my Ontario viewers. Think of that. The entire province of Nova Scotia has fewer people in it than the city of Toronto.
Right.
Right? So when you look at shitholes, and that's what Toronto's turned into, it's not turning into it, it is a shithole.
It is a shithole.
Okay?
Not the city I grew up in.
No, it's a shithole. It's a dump. You can't even drive down the friggin' street because now they've made it goes one way here, but you can't turn that way, and you can only go one block, and then you got to turn. It is a George Orwellian shithole, okay? And that's because it's a sanctuary city, and it's 2.5 million people crammed into a George Orwellian atmosphere. But
it's actually bigger than that.
Well, if you include the whole GTA, all of like
I thought it was like about 4 million.
Yeah.
4 million.
Yeah. To me, Toronto is still the old city of Toronto, from like Etobicoke to the far east end, maybe out towards the Bluffs, right?
Right.
That's Toronto to me. Everything else to me it's still suburbs. I don't care.
So driving distance for that entire area, like in time, like if to drive from one end to the other, how long is it?
Toronto from one end to the other?
On the 401, we're in the middle. Let's take it at the middle of the night, say 1 o'clock in the morning, when there's next to no traffic in good weather, from west to east, starting at the 410 in Brampton. You can go west to east across the entire 4 million people greater Toronto area in about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay, so where I was, to get to Halifax is like the midway point. I know people that traveled 4 hours from Cape Breton, 4 to 4.5 hours from Cape Breton, and 3.5 to 4 hours from the other end of the province to be at this rally.
Yeah.
And they're all people that are going back to their communities saying, this guy's fucking unbelievable. Like, this guy's saying stuff, no script, no teleprompter. He had a couple cue cards. Like, he'd look at a couple cue cards, but for the most part, step away from the podium and just Ad lib, and you can only do that when you're speaking about something that is part of your convictions.
True to your heart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
You're
the way
right, Billy. You're right, Billy. Everyone that was there is going to go home and have dinner and sit around the table and share that information. And we're going to see this wave grow. The Canadians right now, our backs are up against the wall, and we're looking for somebody that's putting the proper thoughts in place, and he is. And like I said, I myself to actually get 100% behind the guy. Well, I'm at that point now because realistically, I listen to the man talk, and I hear a man talking with his heart. I don't see a Justin Trudeau. I don't see an Andrew Scheer. I see a man that's genuine. So either I'm being deceived, which I don't believe I am, or he is the real deal. I'm beginning to believe that this man really deserves our support. Because if you look at the alternatives, and sure, we have somebody out there that's just going, Scheer's the greatest. But you really got to look into Andrew Scheer. You got to look into the progressive conservative leadership race and how Scheer was put in place. You got to look at his background. And you'll find out a lot of very interesting information, his connections to globalist agenda in the past. This man was put in place for a reason, because he's going to go along with the agenda. Just another head on the same snake, guys.
He's just a max headroom. Max headroom.
Yeah. Anyways, that's my thoughts. This has been a good conversation. I love getting in with you guys. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I likewise.
Well, thank you both for coming out tonight, guys. Billy,
what was the second question, Duke?
Yeah, we still got a question to go.
Yeah, and I can't remember what the hell it was I was gonna ask. It'll come to me tomorrow while I'm standing at work, right? I can't remember what it was I was gonna ask you. It was something you said that triggered in my head. Oh yeah, I wanted to, and then we started laughing and joking, and I forgot about it. We'll save it for another night.
I think we should start a page, and we should get involved, gentlemen. And the three of us should travel across the country, because that would be a trip of a lifetime. I've told you before, I am coming to Ontario on 17th of July. So
you're
I have
coming.
I have a flight. Yeah, I'm coming. I'm going to be at that rally in Ottawa on the 20th, and I'm also coming back to visit some family I haven't seen for a few years. So looking forward to it, Duke. We'll have to go out and smoke a few, buddy.
We most definitely will. You've told me you're going to be here in Ontario, Southern Ontario, before you go up to Ottawa. So maybe we'll put it together and travel together to Ottawa. Billy,
yeah, we're going to do that.
If there's any way I know it's a long distance for you to have to get from the East Coast all the way to Ottawa, but if there's any way you can maybe the radio station can float you some funds to do a broadcast or a news coverage of the rally in Ottawa, and we'll get Max Bernier to come, and you can cover it as a Max Bernier event.
Yeah. The radio station can barely afford to pay my salary, let alone send me to Ottawa.
Well, things could change here quickly, Billy, too, also.
Well, you never know, right?
I know.
I know.
I got a lottery ticket for next Friday night.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but there's also just getting out there. People are starting to wake up to this. When you got a leader of he had to vet me before he let me interview him. So they had to go to my channel, and if you look at the titles on the videos on my channel, all of them are controversial. So he had to know what he was getting into before he sat down with me. Like, I can't see that they didn't screen it. So the fact that you got a politician willing to sit down with a YouTuber, I mean, it probably helped that I'm involved with DDA, but the questions I asked him weren't softball questions by any means.
So I guess your request to get Justin on has fallen on deaf ears, eh?
Oh, that's never going to happen. I can't see that going to happen.
Well, I want to point out something.
I would love to sit down with that guy, man, because he would be dancing a lot because he would not be able to answer any of my questions. But I know that's never going to happen.
We'd make him cry.
Oh, boy, would we ever. But we'd have Kleenex for him, buddy.
Both eyebrows would fall off.
Billy, you
I just looked at a facial.
Understand, buddy, that long before you sat down in a chair, long before they looked at you for an interview, when you started working your way into the organizational level of the Electoral District Association, and for those of you who don't know, here in Ontario, we don't have EDAs. We have what are called ridings. So what Billy's doing is he's organizing a group of people who support and are willing to work with the PPC in a specific riding. And it's called, out there, it's called an electoral district association. That's the EDA. Am I right, Billy?
Yeah, we call them ridings as well.
We'll
call it.
Okay.
Yeah, we call it. We use both terms.
Okay. So
one's more an elections Canada term. One's more like the usual, the more colloquial term.
Right. Here in Ontario, we almost everybody calls them ridings, whether it's federal or provincial. But I know from personal experience traveling around the country that different areas refer to them differently, but it all means the same thing.
Yeah.
But they would have checked you out long before you got into that organization. Never mind for an interview. They knew who you were when they said, yeah, okay, you can be part of the executive.
Yeah, I suppose to some extent they would probably done some of that. It was neat. Anyway, it was neat because Joe Hazelton was there as well. He's another truther from Nova Scotia. And there was someone else. There was someone else. They've got a Russian name, and they're based out of Halifax. They've got 10,000 followers, I think, on Twitter. And I wasn't aware of them. They were there as well. So there was 4 different YouTube truthers there. I was the only one that got a one-on-one interview, but I might be the only one that asked. It's a Truth Be Known, I think, is the name of the outfit that got an interview out west.
Okay. Well, if you get more information on it, pass it along. We'll send out a YouTube channel.
I'll see what we can do about possibly even getting Max on a joint interview with the 3 of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not sure that would really have to be like we'd have to make sure we plan that well.
Yeah. I'd more than willing to help with that, brother.
Yeah, because in that kind of, you're not going to get very long, right? So you got to make sure. What I found was my radio experience helped a lot in doing that interview with them for YouTube.
How so?
Yeah, short to the point questions is what you'd want to put in front of the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you let him answer, and then you only do like one rebuttal to whatever he answers if you do a rebuttal. Because I prefer just to let the guy talk. You ask him a question, you make sure the question's well formulated, you make sure he answers them all, and if he doesn't answer them all, you do what I did. Well, that's not, you know what I mean? I'm not happy with that answer. Because like for that thing, it was just I want a politician to say that he's going to put the people of Canada ahead of any queen of any foreign country. So I don't care if you got to pledge allegiance because you think it's part of the Constitution. I want you to say publicly, I got 20,000 subscribers, for at least 20,000 people, that you're putting the people of Canada first, and he did.
Yep, he did.
Brilliant. You know, really, the question,
Billy, he worded it by saying, all the politicians know that they work for the people, and I felt like saying, show me one that proves it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really, you know, when you think about it, we see the direction the country's going right now, and it isn't just Trudeau, like you said. Harper was involved. They all have been involved for the last 60, 70, 80 years. They're all on the same page. So anybody that would think by electing Andrew Scheer that something fundamentally is going to change inside of that party really hasn't looked at our history at all, and is being misled and is being misguided. So I say to anybody that wants to support Andrew Scheer, you really are supporting a head on the same snake, and you really got to look into the background of these gentlemen and who is supporting them, and really do some serious research, and I believe you'll come to the same conclusion. I'm not judging anybody for wanting to support Scheer right now, because we're all wanting to get rid of Trudeau, but in the same mouthful, I say Andrew Scheer is just going to continue a softer agenda of exactly what Trudeau is doing right now. So, my thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I've just been reading some of the comments here in the Facebook chat. Sandy Francis says, Billy, I shared your video last night with almost 1,700 people. 1,700 people across the globe, and now I'm in messenger jail. Ha ha ha.
I put it up on one of my channels there on my Facebook page, Billy, and it's got about 270 views now.
Oh, wow, thanks.
Good video, man.
Thanks.
That little intro that I did with the clip out of your video, Billy, that little short intro that I put out this afternoon as a promo or a trailer for tonight's show, that's had over 400 views.
That was something funny about that rally, was the amount of people that recognized me. I bet you I spent an hour blushing that night.
Really?
Well, it's weird. It's weird when people walk up to you and they're like, "Oh, I watch you on YouTube," and they want a hug and they want a picture and they want. It's kind of funny. I haven't had no one asked for an autograph yet though, so.
It's a weird feeling, eh?
It is. It's a very weird feeling.
Did I tell you what happened when we were out protesting Trudeau? Or no, sorry, we were up in Welland a week ago. Thorold. We were in Thorold a week ago, doing a sidewalk protest. Did I tell you what happened?
No.
A cop rolled. We were at a four-way intersection, three of us, and Ron Devereaux was way over on the kitty corner from me. And a cop pulled up and talked to him for a minute, and I saw Ron point across the intersection at me. The cop flips his overhead lights on, does a 45-degree cut through the intersection, pulls up in front of me on the sidewalk, rolls his window down and says, "You must be Duke Willis." And I'm kind of like, how the hell do you know my name? I didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. And he instantly holds up his cell phone, and it's got my face on one of my videos. He says to me, "My wife has been following you for over a year, dude. She loves what you do. We got your back out here. Stay warm." And he drove away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
nice.
I know what you're talking about. It's like, who the hell are these people that they know me? And out of the blue, people know you. It's weird feeling, dude.
Well, it was funny when I introduced myself to one godless woman, she reacted to me because I walked up to her. I said, "You're one godless woman." She's like, "I am." We exchanged contact information. And when I told her that I was a fan and that I subscribed to her channel, she was like, "Really?" So she kind of had the same reaction that I was having to people coming up to me and saying that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling, man. It really is. When I go out, even at this Trudeau rally last week when he was here, there was people out there carrying signs and wearing yellow vests that I've never met. And they're starting to call my name as I'm getting out of my truck on the other side of the street. They're like, "Duke, we're glad you're here." I don't know who these people are. But they know me. It's a weird feeling, eh, Billy?
Yeah. It's very humbling.
Yeah, big time.
It kind of reminds you that it reminds you that you have a responsibility to be true to yourself, because there are a lot of people relying on you to put information out there that's accurate.
Yeah, and to tell them the truth.
Right, whether it hurts or not.
Yeah, and that's part of my shows. People will tell you, I don't pull punches, I don't cut corners. It's the truth. Whether you don't like hearing it or not, it's the truth. And
I'll delve into conspiracies once in a while, but I'll usually say that it's conspiracies, or if it's conjecture, I'll say that it's conjecture.
Yeah.
Or if I'm theorizing on something, I'll say that I'm theorizing on something. But usually, if I'm theorizing on something, it's because there are a whole lot of coincidences that are fact behind what it is you're theorizing.
Yeah, even in conspiracies, and Barry, you and I've had this conversation. I think we talked about it with Roger Landry one night. Even in a conspiracy theory, there are certain aspects of it that are undeniable truth.
Right. Like in the whole 9/11 thing, there are undeniable truths in there. Anyone that wants to take the time to go visit architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, or firefighters for 9/11 Truth, or pilots for 9/11 Truth.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on, right? If you go look at some of that evidence, there's another video. I believe Dustification is in the title. It's a lady. She's like, I forget. I'm not going to say what field she studied in, because I can't remember exactly which field it is. but she was describing it as this new technology that they've been developing for a while, similar to what we call directed energy weapons.
Yeah, Dr. Helen Woods.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
it was a
I interviewed her last year, Billy.
Oh wow!
And I also had Richard Gage on from Architects 9/11. That's a subject we could do one night, guys. We could. I mean, it's an old subject, but one night we could have a discussion about it because we're all well versed on it.
Right now, I'm looking. It's like 7 minutes to 11. I don't want to get us going into this, but as soon as you mentioned that, I'm thinking I've got a video from the California wildfires that show houses completely just squashed. They're not scorched. They're not burnt. The house right beside on either side of it isn't scorched or burnt. The trees in the backyard aren't scorched or burnt. The grass all around the house isn't even burnt. But the whole house is just crushed flat like a pancake. And there's 3 of them in this neighborhood, and they're claiming it was from the wildfires in the grass around the neighborhood. But there's no evidence of fire. It's just squashed flat. And I've got that video.
Fire.
I could play that for you if we wanted to take the time. But it's already getting late. Billy's pushing midnight. It's 11 here. Barry, you're still like noon hour kind of time out in BC.
One night we should do that. We should do a show again on 9/11 because, like I said, it's old, but it needs to be brought up again because anybody, it's changed our society. It's changed our world.
I'll tell you
it's affected every one of us in our lives.
I'll tell you what. If the 2 of you want to do a show on 9/11, I will bring in the same night. I will bring in a guest. His name is Field McConnell. I've run a couple of videos of his on my Facebook channel. I'll give you some information on the guy. You guys can go check him out.
Well, Phil McConnell, when I started my YouTube channel, I had been following Able Danger for 4 years, so I'm very well familiar with Field's work and David that works for them.
Yeah. Well, I can get Field in on a video Skype call if you guys are interested. It'll take me a couple of weeks to pull it together, but if you're interested, I'd bring him in on a Skype call. You can,
Duke, but I'll warn you that as much as you can sometimes go off on tangents, and we all go off on tangents, Field McConnell likes to go off on little tangents as well.
That's cool. Cool.
He's worse than Roger Landry. Landry.
Yeah, I was gonna say
you got to keep a handle on him because he'll go.
He'll
Look,
go for an hour.
There's a rabbit hole, and kind of like just dive into it, and he's gone. You don't see him for the next hour.
I had him on today. He dropped in for a half hour today on my show there. I had Dr. Bob Dixon in talking about fluoride. He's the gentleman that started Safe Water for Calgary. Boy, there's a guy you got to get on if you ever want to get some information on fluoride. Great guest. I'll hook him up with you. Look, you got to do a show with this guy. But Roger is like the Duracell bunny. You get him going, you can't stop him.
Yeah.
He's got so much information in him.
I listened to him one night you guys were on. I wasn't participating in the show that night, but I listened in for a while, and he was interesting. I'd love to be on a show with him.
That was the night Facebook cut my feed.
Yeah.
Roger and Barry and I were getting pretty intense on a couple of topics, and Facebook cut my feed.
Beep, beep.
I couldn't reconnect that night. I couldn't reconnect until the next afternoon, in fact. I tried the next morning, and it wouldn't let me connect to the stream feed. I couldn't connect until the afternoon.
See what YouTube...
Zuckerberg did that.
You see what YouTube did the other day in the March for Pro-Life March in Washington? Do you know how many people attended that right when Pence was speaking, just after Pence was speaking?
Yeah, 100,000.
Yeah. 100 I thought I read 160,000.
Oh, there you go.
Estimated 160,000 at the first ever March for Life in Washington, and YouTube cut the feed at a very critical point, and it didn't come back, and they called it a technical glitch.
Yeah.
But I was watching it, and Ben Shapiro was on, of course, and a bunch of other really, really intellectual people, and the feed got cut.
Chop.
So, Chop, chop.
Interesting.
Oh, sorry, problem.
Interesting how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, just sorry guys, we had a technical glitch.
Hey, well, you want to hear a funny story about something that happened to me on the weekend? And Cora and I still can't figure it out. All weekend, my internet connection in my room kept cutting out. I'd go out of the hallway, down the hall, next to the elevator, connect, go into my room, and within 15 minutes, gone again. And it did that for the better part of all day Saturday as I was trying to work on videos and upload videos and do research. And according to the front desk, I'm the only person in the hotel that complained about the internet service all weekend.
What a coinkadink.
Yeah, Cora's like, they can't be serious. I'm like, what do you want me to tell you? That's the story.
Welcome to the trenches of patriotism, buddy.
Isn't that crazy?
Hey, just on an aside of the same sort of ideology here, way back a year ago, right before or right after our second rally at Chris Biddle's, when he was getting like 8,000 comments on his Facebook post calling me a racist white supremacist, there were, I'm trying to remember the number. I remember it was over 100 different patriots were stopped by RCMP. Well, they didn't identify themselves as RCMP. They identified themselves as Canadian federal agents. These guys, I know one of them. He comes into the chat room all the time. In fact, I'm going to have him as a guest on my show very soon. I know one of them personally. He was stopped after leaving work on his way home. His phone, he was on a phone conversation and his phone just died. The only call he could make was to his mother. That was the only connection that would go through. No text messages, no nothing. Then he got pulled over. They held him and talked to him. 130 different people were stopped between Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Northern Ontario. All patriots, all very active online group members.
Well, it's interesting.
In different groups.
Yeah, well, tonight I got home and there's this young guy that I listened to from Halifax. He was doing a video on the Rotary Club and how he had been invited to this cafe for this late night literal magic, like Wiccan voodoo magic, black magic, summoning spirits kind of crap.
Yeah.
And he said it was like the who's who of the business community in Halifax. And
boy, are we in trouble.
12 times that his phone shut off while he was trying to record this video. Because when you watch the video, he says, my phone's been cutting in and out every time I try to do this video. He's like, so I'm going to have to script it and read, and every time it cuts out, take off from where, so you can see where it stops. You can see all the times that he has to stop and start over.
Wow.
And he was connecting it to the Rotary Club. Now, a friend of mine who became a lawyer not that long ago, one of the very first things he was suggested or told when he became full-time at the firm was to join the Rotary Club. So the Freemasons Lodge is dead because now people are talking about the Freemasons, but it seems they've taken it to other groups like
the Rotary Club. Across the street to the Rotary Club.
Yeah, or the Kinsmen, or the Lions.
All these great organizations, or so they lead us to believe.
You see, though, guys, it's not the whole organization. It's the upper echelon who are trained, cultured, and schooled into the art of knowing what to know, knowing who to know, and knowing what not to talk about.
Right.
Okay? Like, This has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and these people, like St. Xavier Francis University, that school specializes in grooming people like that.
Well, St. Francis Xavier, the rotten hand, they literally kept his arm in a glass casing. His rotting arm is kept in a glass casing, and it was taken to the university last year so that the alumni could see the rotten hand of the namesake of their university. And the same university, Frank McKenna, who attends Bilderberg regularly, Brian Mulrooney, they're both graduates. So Frank McKenna's with the Liberals, and Brian Mulrooney's the big conservative. And then that university,
all groomed and programmed and mentally trained by the same people, regardless of conservative or liberal.
Exactly.
Right? Which is why it doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all the same.
Right. Now, I went to that university, and part of the grooming was putting you through compromising situations during Frosh Week, and then never knowing when what you did during Frosh Week is going to be held against you. So they compromise you right away. They try anyway, and if you know if you enjoy to drink, sometimes when you're drinking, you'll do crazy stuff when you're young and drinking.
Especially if somebody puts something in it.
Exactly. So, there were some weird things that went on there. I've spoken about that in some of the videos I've done. Sometimes I feel like writing a book on that whole experience and growing up in a Roman Catholic village and leaving the Roman Catholic. You know, like it's quite. Wait
a minute. You left the Roman Catholic religion? Shouldn't the Pope have come and rescued you from heathen Christian Canada?
Yeah, really.
Guys, we got to wrap it up. It's getting late. Billy, your dog wants you to go to bed. The dog came downstairs because the wife said, "Go get Dad."
Okay, fellas, it's always a slice.
And I'm serious, brother. You tell your wife I owe her a bottle of Niagara ice wine for all the time that I steal you away from her and keep you busy.
No, that's fine, Duke. I always appreciate spending time with you, and I always enjoy Barry. I actually like the chemistry we have. We should talk privately on Skype and discuss some sort of regular collaboration.
I would like to see us work on using... I've got a YouTube channel that I don't use. It's called Canadian Truthers. It's got an email address, canadiantruthers@gmail.com. I would love to see us start something on that channel. And bring in your buddy from your other guy that you know from Nova Scotia that you were talking about was at the rally with you at Bernier's thing. And,
well, that's why I'd rather talk about that privately.
Yeah, well, exactly. But that's the sort of thing I think we need to start doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Because I really think we could. There's good content there. But like I said, I'd rather talk the three of us first.
Yeah. So we'll get together one day this week.
Sounds like a plan.
You want to do that, Barry? Okay. Perfect.
Anytime, buddy. I'm in for the long haul.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, fellas, I'm going to call it a night and say good night, because if I don't get off, we'll talk all night. So
we do this every time we get talking, Billy. This afternoon, that phone call that I used in the video, folks, it started out as Billy phoned me and said, "Have you got a minute?" And an hour and 5 minutes later, he was like, "I gotta go to this meeting."
Yeah.
It always happens. We
lose track of time. Like this 2 hours just flew by.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to end this Skype call. Thank you, Billy, on behalf of all our viewers on YouTube and on Facebook. Billy and Barry, thanks for joining me tonight, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You two are proof that my shows aren't about me. My shows are about Canadians. They're about all of us, and that's why I bring guys like you on, because we need voices from all across this country. And until Barry wins the lottery and buys us a motorhome and starts trucking us across the country, this is the only way we can do it. See you guys. Thanks for coming, Billy. Thanks for coming, Barry. We'll talk to you soon.
Good night, gentlemen.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes another night here on Canadian Patriot Report. I want to thank everybody on YouTube for joining us tonight. We've had actually a really good conversation going on in the YouTube chat room. Thank you, folks. I'm thinking that next weekend is the weekend of the 25th, 26th, and 27th. The night of Friday the 25th, I'm thinking about opening up my Skype and my Facebook Messenger and letting my viewers come in. Let you folks come in and just talk. You got questions you want to ask? You got questions you want me to ask other people? Excuse me, I've got the hiccups after drinking 2 bottles of water here. I'm thinking that the weekend of Friday the 25th on my On the Patio show, because it's not a formatted show, I don't have, preset formats or issues that we're going to address. My patio show on Friday night is kind of like walking into my backyard and sitting down on the patio. We'll talk about anything and everything. So mark your calendars for next Friday night. And if there's something you want to come on the air, you don't have to turn your cam on. You can do it by Skype, just a voice call like Barry did tonight, or by Facebook, a voice call on Facebook Messenger. And I'll bring you onto the show and we can talk. You can sit and relax, talk with the other people that are on the show if there's anybody else that wants to join at the same time. So that's next Friday on the patio. Until then, folks, I'm going to send you home tonight with a little video from Shine called Deceived. You can find me on all social media. Twitter at Patriot_Duke. On Facebook /Duke Willis. On YouTube /Duke Willis. On MeWe /Duke Willis. and, of course, on SynthesisSocial.ca/Duke Willis. You can find my live broadcasts on the patio every Friday night, Politically Speaking every Saturday night, and CPR Canadian Patriot Report every Sunday night. Shows start promptly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
In a hot town, Mississippi, surrounded by four walls that were not pretty. His parents give him love and affection.
You're listening to Steve Burnside of the Marquee doing a Stevie Wonder tune, Living for the City. Good night, folks. We'll see you next weekend.
His father works some days for 14 hours, and you can't believe he barely makes $1. Then money goes to scrub the floors for many, and you better believe she hardly makes a penny. Living just enough, just enough for the city. His sister black, but she's short and pretty. Her skirts are short, but Lord, her legs are sturdy. Just to walk to school, she's got to get up early. Her clothes are old, but never are they dirty. Living just enough, just enough for the city. Oh, y'all hear me? Her brother's smart. He got more sense than many. His past is long, but soon he won't have any. Just to find a job is like a haystack needle. Cause where he lives, they don't use colored people. Living just enough.